Merry meet and welcome, witches. My name is Missa, and this is the Blossom Valley Sister podcast. Okay, so I know that I promised these episodes would go out on the 7th of each month, and that was absolutely my intention. But March somehow got away from me. I was super upset with myself at first that this episode wasn't going to go out as planned, especially since it's only the third episode. But a huge part of my trauma healing process is remembering to give myself grace. So I'm not making excuses or apologizing. This episode is going to go out exactly when it is meant to go out. And we're going to discuss grace more in depth in the next episode. For our third episode, I thought it would be appropriate to discuss the rule of three, or the threefold law. If you haven't heard of the rule of three, that means that you haven't seen the craft, and I need you to correct this error as soon as witchly possible. The rule of three is the idea that whatever energy you put out into the world, into the universe, will return to you threefold. It's not a wholly unfamiliar concept. Many of us may have been taught some version of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or more simply, treat others how you want to be treated. I was raised Catholic. Aside from supporting the queer community and reproductive justice, and also using youth group to flirt with local boys, I was a very devout Catholic, and I took the golden rule very seriously. I treated others with the kindness and respect that I believed I should be treated with. But as I moved away from Christianity, I discovered that I was really acting from a place of selfishness instead of graciousness. I did good deeds for others because I wanted the karmic reward. I was a good and kind person on the outside, while on the inside, I harbored a lot of anger and resentment. When I finally embraced the teachings of witchcraft and living by the rule of three, I had to let go of my anger because it wasn't just my actions that were going to return to me threefold. It was my thoughts, my energy. If I was spewing negative energy into the universe, I was going to receive negative energy in return. I'm going to tell you a true story. Right after college, I worked for a truly wicked woman. She was the owner of a small business and my direct supervisor. She was extremely emotionally abusive to the point that I still have nightmares about her, and I left that job a decade ago. But at the time, I needed that job. I was the only one in my household making money, my spouse was in school, and I had student loans to be repaid. I held onto so much anger, so much hostility towards this woman, that I found myself wondering what I could do that would hurt her without affecting my job. And I started to imagine myself egging her house. It was 2015, eggs were affordable. Now, a part of me knew I was never going to follow through with these plans. I am a scaredy cat, afraid of getting caught. But I still clung to the idea like a security blanket. And then one day, shortly after I moved to a new neighborhood, I found someone had thrown an egg at my front window. I knew it was the rule of three putting me in my place. To be fair, it was not a great neighborhood and not the last time we had vandalism, but it was still too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. That's not to say that every bad thing that happens is something you brought on yourself. I lost my spouse to cancer in our 30s. That's so much bigger than the rule of three. Neither of our actions ever could have caused something like that. Sometimes terrible, awful things just happen. It's how you respond to them. That is the important part. Bringing this back to witchcraft, the idea that baneful magic, hexes, curses, that kind of thing, will return to you threefold is the reason why many in the magical community choose not to practice baneful magic or anything that might harm someone else. You'll hear this as part of the Wiccan Rede or the Witches' Rede, and harm none, do what you will. This is a controversial topic in the witchcraft community. But witchcraft is a spirituality of the marginalized. Historically, it has been used as a way for the marginalized to fight back against their oppressors, as a way to find justice when the laws are unjust. In fact, I don't think it's a coincidence that witchcraft, at least in the United States, has become increasingly popular over the last decade, with the constant attacks on women, the queer community, and people of color. When we don't know how to fight back, we turn to the old ways. Following the rule of three is a personal choice, just like every part of your magical practice. There's no wrong way to be a witch. And what might appear as baneful magic to you might be someone else's protection spell. A very popular, simple magical practice that is not necessarily considered baneful is to put someone's name in a jar and pop it in the freezer. My journey from passive Sabbat and Espit? Moon. Sabbat and Espit observer is to, my... Someone please tell me how to pronounce that word. I've only been a witch for 7 years. Okay, but my journey from just observing the holy days to being an active spellcaster came in the form of a binding ritual. And I had other practicing witches tell me that it went against the Witches' Rede. Now, I do still remember the rule of three in my practice, and I generally will not work a spell for someone unless they ask me to. Instead, I tend to evoke the rule of three to work for me rather than against me. For example, I made my first sour jar when someone took legal action against a close friend of mine. I don't remember the exact words for the spell, but it was something to the effect that if he attempted to bring harm to my friend and her family, that his sour energy would return to him threefold. His false allegations were the energy that he put into the universe. The only harm I wished on him was an amplification of what he's doing unto others. More recently, I have been using the rule of three for political magic. I have an Arya Stark-inspired list of politicians and maybe a ketamine-addled billionaire that I recite sometimes before bed. And I simply ask the powers that be, whether those are deities or ancestors or some other mystical power, to return threefold the hate and villainy these men, mostly, have released into our world. The rule of three works for me in a way that isn't all love and light and everything happens for a reason. I'm very protective of my spiritual energy, but I will throw down, metaphysically speaking, if you come for me or my loved ones. Hex the fucking patriarchy. I could go more in depth about baneful magic or political magic, but I am going to save that for a later date in the spirit of keeping these mini-sodes under 10 minutes. So thank you for joining me as we explore the space betwixt and between the magical and mundane. Stay tuned and stop by on the 7th, hopefully, for another chat with me. Sister Missa. Blessed be.